Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Fiqh session. Today, inshallah, we will discuss the menstruation of women, the bleeding of women. And we will discuss again the first issue that we started with last week, which is the maximum and minimum number of days for menstruation. Now, the normal case is that a woman bleeding for a specific number of days, then she stops bleeding. And next month, next cycle, she sees the same blood again, and then that stops. So that will be her cycle every month, her monthly menses. But in some cases, the blood just keeps flowing. So in this case, what should the woman do? How can we determine? This issue is very important because based on that issue, you tell the woman you can pray or you cannot pray. You can fast or you cannot fast. You can have sexual relation with your husband or you cannot. So it is a very important issue. And scholars differed about the maximum and the minimum number of days. Some scholars, and that's the opinion of the majority, they say that the maximum number of days is 15. A woman cannot have menses for more than 15 days. Which means, if she was bleeding continuously, after the 15th day, she starts praying and fasting. This is the opinion of Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i, rahimahumullah. Imam Ahmad has a narration says the maximum is 17 days. It could be 17 days. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah says the maximum is 10 days. It is 10 days. Now, look at these differences. They are very important. Why? Because according to Imam Abu Hanifa, if a woman was bleeding for 16 days, after the 10th day, she has to pray and fast. According to Imam Shafi'i, she waits and she prays only one day, which is after the 15th. So there are 5 days differences, 25 prayers, 5 days of fasting. According to one Imam, you don't pray and fast. According to the other Imam, you have to pray and fast. So that's the importance of this issue. What's the reason for the difference of opinions here? We have several ahadith about the menstruating woman. During the time of the Messenger ﷺ, there were women who did not have a regular cycle. And the Prophet ﷺ gave them the ruling. One woman, the Prophet ﷺ told her, the menstruating blood is known by its characteristics, the color, the smell. To another woman, the Prophet ﷺ told her, count the days that you used to menstruate, and then take a bath, and then pray and fast. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that this is bleeding out of sickness. It is not menstruation. So we have these hadith. But we don't have a specific hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says this is the maximum or the minimum. We don't have such a hadith. But scholars said this is, again, a matter for women to decide. And we look at women and we see that this is the maximum number. So that's why they differed. But the issue is very important. What about the minimum number? Some scholars say there is no minimum. A single flow of blood could be menstruation. Other scholars said no. The minimum is a day and night, 24 hours. Other scholars say 3 days. So again, we have difference of opinions on the minimum number of bleeding. So let's say an imam who thinks that the minimum is 3 days. If a woman saw the blood of menses for 4 hours, she has to wait for 3 days. For 3 days. While in the other opinion, if the bleeding stopped, then that's it. She prays and fasts. So the issue is really important. Let's read it from the book. Open the book. The book, page 51. 51. Can everyone hear online? Read. The jurists disagreed about the maximum and minimum. 51.
The jurists disagreed about the maximum and minimum number of days of menstruation and the minimum number of days of the period of purity. It is related from Malik that the maximum number of days for menstruation is 15, which is also a Shafi'i's opinion. Abu Hanifa said that the maximum number of days is 10. There is no minimum limit for the period of menstruation according to Malik, who said that it could be a single flow of blood, though he does not take this minor discharge into account in calculating the period's intervals. The Shafi'i said that the minimum period of menstruation is 1 day and a night. Abu Hanifa said that the minimum is 3 days. Narrations from Malik differed about the minimum period of purity. It is related from him that it is 10 days. It is related that it is 8 days, and it is related that it is 15 days.
Okay, so you see we have lots of differences. Go all the way to the end, the last paragraph, all these opinions. This is what we need to know also. Now you need to know the opinions, but you need to also know the reason why they differed. Read the last paragraph, all these opinions given by fuqaha.
All these opinions given by fuqaha about the minimum period of menstruation, its maximum, and the minimum period of purity have no revelatory basis. The basis is...
What's the basis for all these opinions? It is what? The experience from women.
The basis is experience and what each believed to be the usual occurrence. Each one of them said what he thought the common experience of women to be. It is difficult, however, to fix by experience limits for such things because of the differences among women. The differences that arose about such things are those that we have mentioned. They agreed generally that if bleeding extends beyond the maximum period of menstruation, it is to be considered as istihada.
Why they agreed that it has to be istihada? Because you cannot tell a woman that she doesn't have to pray forever or fasts. Habiba radiallahu anha bin Jahsh, she was for many years bleeding, many years. So imagine if you tell her you don't fast or pray for several years. So as long as she exceeded the maximum days of menstruation, then she has to be mustahaba. But what's the maximum? They differed.
Considered as istihada due to the words of the Messenger of Allah related by Fatima bint Hubaysh, was told by the Prophet when menstruation commences, you should stop praying, and when the normal number of days for menstruation is over, wash the blood away from you and pray. The woman whose bleeding extends beyond the maximum period of menses will necessarily have gone beyond menstruation. Al-Shafi and Malik, may Allah have mercy on him, held in one of two narrations from him, Malik, about the woman accustomed to menstruation, that she is to act according to her usual course because of the tradition of Salama recorded in Al-Muwatta. A woman at the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to bleed copiously, so So Salama consulted the Messenger of Allah ﷺ concerning her. He said she should take into account the number of days and nights for which she used to menstruate in a month prior to this affliction. She should give up praying for such a period each month. When this period is over, she should take a bath, tie her private parts with a cloth, and pray. They linked the hukum of the woman who is doubtful about the menstruation with the hukum of a woman suffering from unhealthy bleeding, istihada, who is in doubt about her normal menstruation.
Okay, that's enough about this issue. What's the maximum number of days? What's the minimum number of days? What are the opinions? What's the reason for disagreement? What is left is, what do you think is the strongest opinion? And this is very difficult to judge because it depends. Sometimes it varies from a different place to another place. It varies from time to time. So it depends. You need to see and to look at the nature of people. And actually this is a matter of women. They should be more aware of the rulings of the issue of menstruation. If there is a woman who can distinguish, so she should distinguish. Whenever the blood that she knows coming, the blood of menses, then she judges that this is the blood of menses. She looks that she used to stay for 7 days, she stays for 7 days. She looks to the people in her family. How many days usually they were bleeding. So it depends actually on the situation. You cannot really say that this is the correct opinion and everything else is wrong. This is the first issue that we have. The second issue, another issue which is also a little bit difficult. If a woman menstruates for 7 days, and the next month she menstruated for 7 days, that is what? That's usual or normal. But then she menstruated only for 2 days. Only for 2 days. And then she stopped for 2 days. Then she bleeded again for 2 days. What's the ruling on those 2 days that are in the middle? Is it menses or purification? Purification. Why? The blood stopped. What do you mean by the blood stopped? Now a woman cannot determine 100% that she is pure until she sees the sign of purity. The blood only stopped.
You asked them what the ruling.
Yeah. What do you think about those 2 days? This is the issue that we're discussing. A woman is bleeding, and then she stopped. Then she bleeded again. Then she stopped. So what do we do?
So what is the sign?
It will come.
If you haven't seen the sign, no, it's not purification.
It's not purification, although it may last for 1 or 2 days.
The sign is not there. If the ruling that she has to see the sign, she hasn't seen the sign.
Well, women are different. Some women, the sign for them is the stop of bleeding. And for women, the white discharge. So, let's read and find the issue.
I can give you a ruling on that.
Let's see if you will change quickly. Read. Page 53.
The case of the woman whose menstruation ceases then begins again. Malik and his disciples held that a woman whose bleeding is sporadic bleeding for a day or two and then becoming pure for the next day or two is to add up the number of days for which she has a flow of blood, ignoring the days of purity. She is to bathe each day that she finds herself to be pure and pray, because even though she is not sure, it may be a period of purity. If the days of bleeding have added up to 15, she is a mustahada from the nun. This opinion was also upheld by Al-Shafi'i. It is also related from Malik.
Okay, what's the understanding of this opinion? What does it say? She should pray. So what do we consider those days in the middle? Days of purity. She has 2 days of menstruation. Then she stopped for 2 days. Those 2 days, what does she do? Pray. Then she menstruated for 5 days. Then she was pure for 2 days. What does she do? She prays. Then she menstruated for 7 days. You have to collect those days of bleeding. If they exceeded 15, then what? She is mustahada. So you don't count anymore, and she is pure at any rate. Before that, you collect. That's what it means. You add up until they are 15. Because according to Imam Malik, what's the maximum number of bleeding? 15 days. Okay, let's continue. Now we understand this opinion. Let's continue.
It is also related from Malik that she is to add up her days of bleeding and measure them against her usual menstrual period. When these are equal, she is to add another 3 days for the flow to cease. Otherwise,
This is another opinion, and it is also for Imam Malik. What's the difference between that opinion and the previous one? According to this opinion, she looks for her usual cycle. She used to have 7 days. Now, she was bleeding for 3 days. Then she stopped for 2 days. Then she bleeded for 5 days. She doesn't count 5 days. She counts only 4, because she was bleeding only for 3 already. And this 4, that's 7. So now she has 1 extra. She adds 3 days only extra, and then it becomes what? Pure. So if she used to have menses for 7 days, now she counts only 7 days and 3 days plus. That's the only opinion of Imam Malik, rahimahullah. Only Imam Malik said that. She has to add 3 days. The Prophet ﷺ said, count the days that you used to have menstruation. But Imam Malik said, these 3 days are extra, just to be on the safe side. So she adds 3 days, so she doesn't wait until they are 15. If she used to bleed for 6 days, she counts 6 days and then 3 days. After that, she is pure. She is only mustahada. Okay, read.
considering the days in which there is no flow of blood as excluded from the count is incomprehensible. For there are either days of purity or of menstruation. If there are days of menstruation, it is necessary that they be added to the days of bleeding. But if they are days of purity, then there is no need to add up the remaining days of bleeding, since they are separated by the days of purity. What conforms with his Malik's principles is that these are the days of menses and not of purity, as the minimum period for purity is limited in his view, and there is more than a day or two. And it is more than a day or two. Think over this, and it will be evident, inshallah. The truth is that menstrual and postnatal blood flows and then ceases for a day or two, flowing again till the menstrual or postnatal period is over, just as it may flow for an hour or two in a day and then stop.
So according to the author, does he agree with this opinion? He says that it stops for a day or two, just as it stops for an hour or two. What does that mean? That means those days, 2 days that she stopped, counted as menses, just like if the bleeding stopped for 2 hours, because the menstruating woman does not necessarily bleeding continuously. The bleeding starts, then it stops, drops, stops, and so on and so forth. So he doesn't really agree with and that's another opinion also, that those days are days of menstruation. If she bleeded for 4 days, then she stopped for 1 day, then she bleeded also for 1 day, they are all what? Menstruation. But why the other opinion is stronger? Because if you say it's menstruation, there is no bleeding and nothing, and yet you still say it's menstruation, she cannot pray, she cannot fast. Based on what? Based on what? You have yaqeen, always judge with yaqeen. Yaqeen, certainty that there is no blood, so you cannot say it is menstruation. Unless we have another certainty, which is the bleeding, we cannot say she has to stop fasting or praying. So this is the second issue that we have, which is the bleeding, the blood ceases and flows again. Next issue, which is similar to the issue of menstruation, the postnatal blood. A woman who delivered a baby, what's the maximum? What is the maximum? 60? Huh? 40? 40 or 60? What do you think? If you say 40, what does that mean? If a woman was bleeding for 45 days, continuous blood, only 40 days count. Then she has to take a bath and she prays. But if you say 60, you are giving her 5 days extra. What's the minimum? What's the minimum? Some scholars said there is no minimum. Some scholars said the minimum is 11. See the difference, the huge difference? When they say 11, what does that mean? For 11 days, she doesn't pray or fast. Again, what's the evidence here? If you say either 11 or no minimum, or maximum, you say 60 or 40, what's the evidence? What's the evidence? There is again no evidence. The only thing you could say is the experience of women. And nowadays, you hear many women saying that they used to bleed for 45, 48, 47, 35, 32, 20. So which one do you say is stronger? It depends. But the scholars who said it is 40, they are the majority. The majority of scholars said a woman after birth, after giving birth, she cannot stay for more than 40 days. The next issue that we have is the blood seen by the pregnant woman. When a woman is pregnant, can she see blood or not? She can. It is possible. Is this blood menstruating blood? No. Which means even if she saw the blood, she has to do what? To pray. Well, other scholars said no. Some scholars say it is possible that this is menstruation blood. What do you think? Biological phenomena. Why? Because the egg is supposed to be the food for the baby. And now the woman is pregnant. So it cannot happen, right? Scientifically, does it happen or it does not? It does? It does, yeah. It does. It may happen. It may happen. It's possible. It is possible. But still, some scholars said no. As long as the woman is pregnant, she has to pray all the time. Even if she saw the blood, that's a blood of sickness. That's the food of the baby. That means the baby himself is getting weak because he's unable to get the food. Let's read this issue. Page 54.
Blood seen by the pregnant woman. The jurists both early and later disagreed whether the blood seen by...
Why they disagreed early and later? Because again, there is no clear evidence from the Prophet ﷺ. What what can we say there is a clear evidence? If there is a scientific fact, for fact, not only theory, if there is a fact that the woman who is pregnant cannot menstruate, then we say that's the correct opinion. If we don't have this fact, we cannot say this is the correct opinion.
They disagreed whether the blood seen by a pregnant woman is to be deemed as hayd or istihada. Malik Shafi, in his more reliable opinion, and other jurists held that a pregnant woman can menstruate. Abu Hanifa, Ahmad, Al-Tawri, and others said that the pregnant woman does not menstruate.
See, so many scholars differed. You cannot say that this is a stronger opinion. Actually, it's like 50-50.
And the blood discharged from her is that of illness, unless she is having labor pains, in which case they agreed that it is to be deemed as postnatal bleeding. And her hukum is the hukum of a menstruating woman with respect to the prohibition of prayers and other related ahkam. From Malik and his disciples, there are conflicting narrations about a menstruating woman with
Yeah, we don't need that. Go to the last paragraph, the reason for their disagreement.
The reason for their disagreement on this issue stems from the difficulty of relying on experience and the obscurity of the subject. Sometimes the blood that a pregnant woman sees is the blood of menstruation, which is the case of an exceptionally strong woman where the fetus is small and it could be a double pregnancy, as is related from Hippocrates and Galen. And
Those are philosophers. Because again, Ibn Rushd, he was a philosopher, he was a doctor, and he was a jurist.
Hippocrates and Galen and the rest of the physicians. Sometimes the blood that she witnesses could be due to the weakness of the fetus, and its illness generally depends upon her frailty and illness, in which case it is the blood of a defect and illness, and usually it is the blood from a defect.
Okay. So this is the issue of the pregnant woman who is bleeding. Now, she is usually bleeding for 7 days. Then she got pregnant. And she saw the same blood with the same characteristics. Do you still tell her that, no, this is not a menstruating blood, this is only blood of sickness? According to Imam Malik and Imam Shafi, rahimahullah, no, this is menstruating blood. The next issue we have is the discharges that happen other than blood. Now we know the color of the blood. Red, dark, even up to black, very dark. But what about the yellow discharges, the brown discharges, all these discharges? Do you deem it as menstruation or not? That's the issue. Mucus and pus. What do you consider those? Any answer? Difference of opinions. So if there is difference of opinions, that's an excuse to choose whatever you want.
Also, it's not blood, so it can be menstruation.
It's not blood, so it cannot be. Okay, a woman is used to bleed for 7 days. That's her regular cycle. 1 month, she was bleeding for 4 days. After those 4 days, she did not see the sign of purity, but rather she saw a brown color discharges for 2 days. Is this purification or menses? Why? She's not sure. Okay, another case. The woman is bleeding for 7 days, but she bleeded only for 6 days. Her blood stopped. After 5 days, she saw yellow discharge or brown discharge. Menstruation or not?
It's exactly what you said it was, discharge.
It's
It's not menses.
not menses.
It's discharge. That's exactly what it is. Discharge.
Well, that's not exactly the case, actually. Let's see. Read. The correct opinion that during the menses, any discharge is considered also menses. But after the regular cycle, if there are discharges, as long as they are not blood, yes, that's true. It is not menses. Here, we have evidence here. It's a little bit easier. And the main evidence here is the hadith of Atiyya radiyallahu anha. She says, we used not to count the brown, the yellow discharge after purification. We is not counted as anything. That means if it was before, then it is count, although it is only discharge. Read the issue.
Mucus and pus, licoria. The jurors disagreed about the yellow and brownish discharge, licoria, whether it amounts to menstruation. A group of jurors held that it is menstruation during the days of menstruation, which was the opinion of Ash-Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, and the same is related from Malik. In Al-Mudawwana...
What is Al-Mudawwana?
Compendium of Maliki Fiqh.
Uh-huh. What's the significance of it? These are the opinions of Imam Malik rahimahullah that are documented. Scholars came to him, his followers, and they asked him questions and they wrote them down, the answers. So that's how they established the Maliki opinions, based from Malik rahimahullah.
In Al-Mudawwana, it is related from him that the yellow and brown discharges are to be considered as menstruation during the menstrual days, as well as in others.
So according to this opinion, after the days of menses, is it still considered menses? According to this opinion of Imam Malik rahimahullah. Yes. According to this opinion, yes, it counts anytime. Read again. It is related from him.
It is related from him that the yellow and brown discharges are to be considered as menstruation during the menstrual days, as well as in others.
As well as in others. So that's not the same opinion as the first one. Okay, continue.
Irrespective of the flow of blood with it. Dawood and Abu Yusuf said that the yellow and brown discharges are not menstruation unless accompanied by blood.
They are accompanied by blood. Do we need to think about the other discharges? We have the blood. But if they are not, so we have now how many opinions? 3 opinions. First opinion, if it's during the menstruation days, it is what? Menstruation. If it's outside, not. Another opinion says anytime, it is what? Menstruation. A third opinion says what? Unless it is accompanied by blood. It could be and it could be not. Okay.
The reason for their disagreement is the conflict of the apparent meaning of the tradition of Atiyya with that of Aisha. It is related from Atiyya that she said, "We did not attach significance to the yellow and brown discharge after bathing." It is related.
Okay, what do you understand from this hadith? After bathing, yes, so after the purification, if you still see some discharges, you don't count them. And when a companion says, "We did not attach," she's talking about herself, she's talking about others also. And that takes the ruling of what? Of hadith. Because when a group of Muslims at the time of the Messenger ﷺ do something, if it was wrong, the wahi will come and correct it. Okay.
It is related from Aisha that the woman used to send her a folded scroll containing cotton on which there was a yellow and brown discharge from the menstrual blood, asking her about prayers. She said, "Do not hasten things till you see that the white mucus, which denotes the end of menstruation and the beginning of purity, is white." Those who preferred Aisha's tradition deem the yellow and brown discharges as
Menstruation.
menstruation.
Is that true? Now, I think the understanding of the hadith still supports the first evidence. Why? Because the bleeding stopped, but there was no sign of purification. Instead, there were, what? The discharges. So these are attached to menses. So it is still menses. So I don't see any contradiction between the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha with the hadith of Atiyah.
Whether it was found in the days of menstruation or otherwise, with blood or without it, because the hukum of a single thing cannot differ within itself from its constituents. Those who desire to reconcile the two traditions said that the tradition of Atiyah relates to the case after the cessation of bleeding, while Aisha's tradition relates to the time immediately following it.
Exactly, that's the correct understanding.
Or that the tradition of Aisha relates to the period of menstruation, and that of Atiyah relates to the days free from menstruation. A group of jurists followed the literal meaning of Atiyah's tradition and did not attach any significance to the yellow and brown discharges, either during the days of menstruation or on other days.
This is the opinion of the third opinion. They said they followed the hadith literally. We don't give any significance to the yellow or brown discharges. So they took it literally.
Either the days of menstruation or other days, either immediately following the blood or after its cessation, because of the words of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the blood of menstruation is dark and can be identified, and because the yellow and brown discharges are not blood, they are like all the other discharges related by the womb, which is the opinion of Abu Muhammad ibn Hazm.
Okay. So that's about it for today's issues. Is there any questions? Yes.
It's a funny question.
Funny?
Yeah. I would appreciate if you could answer the question. The question is, in the first year, you told us 3 types of women.
Yeah.
The distinguisher, the one who goes by the family trend,
Yeah.
and another one.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
The beginner.
The beginning. Thank you.
You're welcome. The one who begins. What should she do? We just took it in the first issue.
If you only said 2.
But you need to read. Any other questions? Okay. Then we'll stop here inshallah. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى صحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.